So Gentle Criminal is the second main villain in Season 4, and whilst he's nowhere near as sadistic as Overhaul, he still represents a massive threat to world peace, or at least the UA Cultural Festival. But if you think about it, they're kind of the same thing, sort of. This video will break down his backstory and his awesome quirk, which allowed him to go full Captain America on a group of professional heroes. So starting with his backstory, Gentle's real name is Danjuro, and he is somehow only 32 years old. When I first saw this character, I genuinely assumed he was at least 55. When he was a teenager, Danjuro had dreams of becoming a hero, and attended a low-level hero school. Now, whilst he was there, he was held back and had to retake his second year, having already failed the provisional license exam 4 times by that point. 4 times, guys. 4 times. And when we check out his latest stats from the Ultra Analysis book, you'll see that his intelligence is rated a very unimpressive 2 out of 6, so I guess it's not all that surprising. But despite that, he has a very bright personality with myriad levels of optimism. His ultimate aim was to be a great enough hero to be written about in the textbooks, and that's essentially his philosophy in a nutshell. He's a guy who wants to be remembered by future generations, and later his philosophy evolves into wanting to inspire those who feel left behind by society as well. Now, one day when he was leaving a cafe, Gentle spotted a window cleaner falling off a building and figured that his quirk could help the guy. And whilst I'll explain his quirk in a bit, the main point is that in trying to save this person, Gentle got in the way of a hero performing his duties, which then led to the man suffering severe injuries from which he needed 6 months to recover. This is when his life began to fall apart, as he was charged with obstructing public duties and thrown out of his parents' house. Hell, he was even expelled from school. His initial act of trying to save this window cleaner is eerily similar to how Deku rushed into battle to save Bakugo and how Koichi rushed in to save Popstep. This is a guy who, just like them, tried to save an innocent person, but unlike them, Gentle had undesirable results that made his life infinitely worse. Danjuro was unlucky in a way that those two weren't. That's the only difference here. And by the way, if you don't know who Koichi is, then I'd recommend checking out my explanation video of My Hero Academia Vigilantes after this one. But moving on. In the new outro for Season 4, we see a young Gentle at school with his friend Takeshita. Now in the manga, Takeshita was a final year student who had offers from several hero agencies, and 4 years after Gentle was expelled, he was unemployed and saw his old school friend patrolling the streets as a hero. So naturally, as you see your old friend, you go up to say hi, but to his surprise, Takeshita didn't even remember who he was. Which is pretty crazy when you think about it. How do you forget someone completely after only 4 years, dude? It was at this moment that Gentle realized that his dreams of becoming a famous hero was dead. But if he couldn't be remembered for that, then he'd become infamous instead. Searching through his closet, he found an old book called The History of Supervillainy, which served as an inspiration for what he was about to become. And I think what makes him such an interesting villain is that he's not motivated at all by money or whatever else villains typically want. Instead, as he says here, it's all about exposure, literally. And because of that, a few years later, Gentle began uploading videos on YouTube under the alias of Gentle Criminal, and in doing so became the first proper YouTuber that we've heard of in the My Hero Academia world. However, his videos haven't really gone too viral, and if you notice here, his comment section has quite a few haters. Due to his generally kind personality, he's not really someone who goes over the top in committing acts of violence. In fact, he rather wouldn't do it at all. So when people like All For One and Stain are going viral for their actions, people don't really gravitate to Gentle's content. I guess because, for lack of a better word, it's just a bit too gentle. But despite averaging about 10 views per video, Gentle did manage to snag himself a super fan in his sidekick Brava. Now, Brava is someone who, at a certain stage in her life, was very depressed and glued to her computer all day. She happened to stumble across Gentle's channel and was inspired by his optimism. She tracked him down using her awesome coding skills, which Gentle didn't find creepy at all for some reason, and in fact, he believed that they would make the perfect team. One last thing before we move on to explaining his quirk, it wouldn't be a Gentle Criminal video if I didn't mention the fact that this guy loves tea. Tea to Gentle Criminal is what All Might is to Deku, just to give you a bit of perspective. In fact, as I said, just before he ruined his life, he was coming out of the cafe, like this guy can't be stopped. But the way he pours the tea so dramatically, I think the ratio of tea poured to tea that ends up in the cup is probably not the best here. Anyway, Gentle Criminal's quirk has a lot of different practical applications which make him incredibly dangerous. Putting it simply, his quirk is called elasticity, and it allows him to make anything he touches stretchy and elastic. So basically like the inverse of Luffy from One Piece. Just to get your head around this, I'm going to lay out a couple of examples as to how he uses this quirk. So firstly, he can touch the ground and turn it elastic, and make it into a trampoline. this has the knock-on effect of sending enemies flying into the air, or, because he's mastered this power, he can do the exact same thing but instead send himself flying into the air in a controlled manner. Another example would be his gently rebound attack, in which he turns the air itself elastic. This means that anyone who runs into the air will then be violently blasted in the other direction, and because air is usually invisible, it's a great way to catch enemies by surprise. They'll literally just run into it and then be thrown back in the opposite direction. The dangerous thing about this quirk is that he can manipulate virtually any situation to his advantage. As I said, he can turn the air elastic, which gives him a massive element of surprise, whilst also providing him with a quick and easy method of escaping. And it also makes him pretty agile as well, as he can change direction fairly easily. Some interesting things to note about this quirk is that elasticity cannot be cancelled out by someone else's quirk. Rather, it can only disappear after a period of time has passed. So what I'm saying is that once he's turned something elastic, nothing is going to make that thing not elastic anymore. You just have to wait until the time has passed. Now, some people may perceive this as a weakness, as Gentle doesn't exactly control when the elasticity turns off, but given the way we've seen him use it, it doesn't really seem to be too much of a drawback. Without getting into plot spoilers, we've seen that Gentle Criminal can make heavy objects elastic and then use them in ways that would otherwise be impossible. When we go back to his stats, we see that besides having a 5 out of 6 for Loving Tea, he also has a 4 out of 6 for his technique. Now, I personally think that his technique should be higher than this, simply for the fact that if you told me of this power, I'd have assumed that being able to turn the air elastic would be the pinnacle of a quirk like this. It's super impressive that Gentle is able to do this despite never even finishing his formal hero training. Remember, he got expelled from school in his second year, and it wasn't even that good of a school. So to have mastered his quirk in this way and to be able to take down multiple professional heroes, albeit average professional heroes, it's still super impressive. When we first saw his quirk in action, he turned an entire shop into what looks like strawberry jelly. So yeah, awesome quirk, great technique, and ultimately he's going to be a tough villain to be defeated. But anyway guys, that was my quick breakdown of Gentle Criminal's backstory and his quirk. Once this whole arc is done, then I'm going to do a video looking forward regarding certain characters involved in this arc. And if you like this video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. If not to me, then at least to Gentle Criminal. You owe him that much. And be sure to check out my latest theory video where I deconstruct why Kirishima was in fact the third user of One For All. And yes, it makes sense. But until next time, peace out.